Hello, everyone. Welcome to our presentation. I'm Isabel Vittorio, an undergrad from Minerva University, and I'm here today with Cole and Daniel, master students at UChicago. And while this summer we had the chance to work at CDAC, the Center of Data and Computing at UChicago, together with a project with Shmeet Ocean Institute for Dive Data Processing. So our team had the pleasure to work with Shmeet Ocean Institute, which is a nonprofit here in Bay Area that conducts oceanographic research. They do so by using Sebastian, which is a remote operated submarine that collects footage and samples. And the purpose of the data collected from Sebastian is pretty much to further scientific knowledge, to disseminate it to the rest of the world. And imperative to this goal is that being able to filter and search through like terabytes of unlabeled oceanographic data that is collected. So it's a big challenge when we don't have the unlabeled data. And for that work, we focus on two main goals. Follow along with their mission, which is finding highlights of these dives and be able to tag interesting frames, such as when the bot is in shot. And diving more into the data, we worked with over 145 hours of video data from 20 dives, and they came from Shmeet Ocean Institute API in form of JPEG images, in which each frame was sampled 1 second apart. And as I mentioned, one crucial challenge was that the data is totally unlabeled, make the detection and tagging very difficult. And that's one of the reasons why we work with unsupervised deep learning. And highlighting some of our tools here, we use Python and we focus on PyTorch for building highlights, reels, and OpenCV for tagging frames.
So as Isabel mentioned, the first goal of our project was to implement a model to automatically generate dive video highlights reels for Schmidt Ocean Institute. Since our task was video summarization, and since we were working with an unlabeled data set, we chose to utilize proven methods in the form of unsupervised deep learning models. These types of neural network-based models are particularly well suited for detecting patterns and extracting features from an unlabeled video. So the first and more straightforward method that we utilized for this task was to leverage a pre-trained residual neural network called ResNet to produce feature vectors for each frame. This approach of using a pre-trained feature extractor is called transfer learning. This particular network was pre-trained on an open source data set of millions of images called ImageNet. And so the model is well suited to extract features from our dive videos. So we then passed the outputted feature vectors to a Gaussian mixture clustering algorithm, which clusters the frames into similar groups, which are then sampled to determine the keyframes chosen for each dive video. Finally, the highlight video for a dive is generated based on a time window surrounding each chosen keyframe. And now we will show an example of a generated highlight video.
As Cole said, we're looking at a small excerpt from a highlight reel generated by this model. The importance of these highlight reels is that we're able to reduce a 10-hour video into a video that's only 5 to 20 minutes long, with this time just depending on user input. And even with the reduced time, we're still able to see many of the exciting events and organisms that occur in the full-length dive. So as you can see in the video, the model does a good job at finding frames that contain fish and plants. And if we were looking at different excerpts of the highlight reel, you might see that it also does a pretty good job at showing the robot collecting samples. However, there's definitely still room for improvement. As you can see, there are still frames that contain things that aren't as exciting, like plain rock or sand. There are also segments where there's too much repetition in the frames chosen. So right now, we're currently working to improve this by using the tags that we developed to try and narrow down which keyframes to keep. So we are working on a more complex model to see if it can generate a better highlight reel. Similar to the previous model, a pre-trained CNN is used to extract feature vectors for each frame. However, this model uses these vectors as input to an LSTM, which is trained using reinforcement learning. The model operates under the assumption that a good summary is one that has a high degree of diversity between selected frames and is representative of the entire video. So in this model, it's trained to maximize these two qualities in a summary.
And for the second part of the project, which is tagging, we're using tagging to help us to identify parts that the highlight video did not necessarily find. So one example is tagging the robot arm, in which by identifying which frames contain the arm could help us to see where it catches something interesting, such as the starfish and other sea life on the left. And in order to work with this, we worked with a different node algorithms OpenCV for feature detection, such as SIFT and ORB. And at the end, we ended up using ORB for most of the tagging because it's a way more efficient algorithm, and we're going to use it as a final project at the end. So the way this algorithm work is that they locate certain key points and then furnish them into quantitative information called descriptors, in which these descriptors are used to search for other points in further images and be able to point where the bot is. So for instance, we use 5 train images to be able to calculate the descriptors, and then we put a run on the dive to be able to see where would be those points be similar. And so, which is they are also known to be invariant against transformations such as different angles, which works perfect because the ball will be moving around. So if the logo is different in our train image, this is going to work either way. And at the end, this algorithm turned out to be really great, be able to attack the bot, but still there are some points that they detect not necessarily the arm. And so a way to continue working on this is setting up thresholds of these descriptors and to be able to diminish this type of error.
We also created tags for the zoom on the ROV camera, since this may indicate that the ROV is looking at something interesting. In order to do this labeling, we used OpenCV's ORB algorithm to find matching key points between consecutive images. Using these matching key points, we were then able to calculate the affine transform matrix. We could then decompose this matrix to find the scale transformation from the first image to the second. So looking at these two images, we can see that there's about a 2x zoom. Instead of reporting the numerical scale transformation, we labeled images as either zoom in, zoom out, or no zoom. So in this example, the image on the left would be labeled as zoom in. We also created tags for the light on the ROV brightening or dimming, as this may indicate that the pilot is adjusting the light to look at something interesting. We labeled images as ROV light brightening, ROV light dimming, and no ROV light change. In order to do this, we calculate the difference in mean pixel value of grayscale images between consecutive images. Or in other words, we just calculate the difference in brightness. But one thing we noticed while doing this is that changes in zoom are often calculated as also changing in brightness, since the ROV is zooming in and out of light often. You can see this in the images shown, where in the top two images, the ROV light is dimming, but in the bottom image, the brightness in the image is reduced due to zooming out. In order to account for this, we labeled images that had zoom as having no ROV light change.
So another one of the tags we generated is depth level of the ROV in the ocean. For this particular tag, we implemented a pixel-based algorithm leveraging OpenCV, which looks at the trailing average brightness and saturation level of all the blue colored pixels in each frame, and then categorizes the frame based on thresholded values. This approach follows some empirical evidence and an intuitive understanding of shades of blue at different depth levels in the ocean. For example, we typically see brighter blues and higher saturation in shallow levels due to more direct sunlight, while we see deeper blues and lower saturation in the midwater. Another tag we generated is essentially a binary classification between open water and solid surface, essentially asking, is the frame occupied by the open ocean or does it contain some kind of surface? And the approach we took for this tag is similar to the previous mentioned in that it also leverages thresholded pixel algorithms, with the basic concept being that frames of open water have a higher percentage of blue pixels and that the overall contrast in the image is low. So in conclusion, our deliverable to the Schmidt Ocean Institute is essentially a foundation for an open source oceanographic video processing pipeline, which includes basic automated tagging and video summarization. We hope our contributions to this pipeline will help the Schmidt Ocean Institute to more efficiently explore and organize their current and future dive footage. We believe the video summarization capability will give the Schmidt Ocean Institute another tool to market their work to the outside world and highlight interesting findings in their dive videos. We also hope that this plan for an open source data science platform will be of assistance to oceanographers in the future. In terms of our anticipated next steps for this project, we believe it will be important to pull new video data from expeditions to further train and test our models. We also suggest exploring more advanced or specialized video summarization models that may result in better video highlights. And finally, we believe it may be helpful to get labeled data from the Schmidt Ocean Institute to improve these and future methods. So to conclude, we would like to say our thanks to our mentors, Daniel, Zhao Kai, Trevor, and David, to the team at Schmidt Ocean Institute, and to CDAC for their assistance and support this summer. Thank you for listening to our presentation.